The Arizona sun was merciless as it beat down on the Crawford ranch, turning the red earth into a baking oven that shimmered with heat waves. 15-year-old Rebecca hauled another bucket of water from the well, her thin arms straining with the weight, sweat plastering her dark hair to her pale face. She had been working for Silas Crawford for 8 months, since her parents had died of fever and left Ito. Her with nothing but debts, the rancher had been all too willing to help with by taking her on as unpaid labor. It was barely better than slavery, but it was survival, and survival was all Rebecca had left. Crawford was a hard man, tall and thick with muscle turned to fat, his face perpetually red from sun and whiskey, his voice loud and cruel. He ruled his ranch through fear and violence, treating his workers, both the few paid hands and the unpaid servants like Rebecca, with casual brutality. His word was law on his land, and he made sure everyone knew it. Rebecca had learned quickly to keep her head down, work without complaint, and avoid his attention whenever possible. The bruises on her arms told the story of times she had failed to be invisible enough. That afternoon, as Rebecca carried laundry through the main house, she heard Crawford and his foreman, a scarred man named Pike, laughing in the parlor. "Best catch we've had in years," Crawford was saying, his voice thick with satisfaction and whiskey. "Apache war chief, no less. They'll think twice about crossing my land, now that I've got their precious Silent Thunder chained up like the animal he is. Let him rot down there for a week or two, then we'll string him up where everyone can see. Make an example that'll last." Rebecca froze in the hallway, her heart pounding. She had heard rumors among the other servants that Crawford had captured someone, that there was a prisoner in the old root cellar beneath the barn. But an Apache war chief? The tribes in this territory were already on edge from settlers pushing onto their lands, from broken treaties and escalating violence. If Crawford had captured and was torturing a war chief, it could trigger retaliation that would get everyone on the ranch killed. The stupidity of it was matched only by its cruelty. That night, after Crawford and his men had drunk themselves into their usual stupor, Rebecca lay in her small servant's room, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about the prisoner in the cellar, alone in darkness, probably wounded, almost certainly dying slowly from neglect and abuse. It was none of her business. Getting involved would only bring Crawford's wrath down on her head. She should stay in her room, mind her own survival. Let the Apache warrior face whatever fate Crawford had planned for him. But something in Rebecca's heart wouldn't let her rest with that decision. Moving as quietly as a ghost, Rebecca crept from her room and made her way to the kitchen. She took a small portion of bread and dried meat, not enough to be obviously missing, but enough to sustain someone for a day. She filled a water skin from the barrel by the back door, grabbed a clean cloth and the bottle of whiskey Cook kept for medicinal purposes, then slipped out into the night. The Arizona darkness was profound, the stars brilliant overhead, providing just enough light to navigate by once her eyes adjusted. The old root cellar was accessed through a slanted wooden door set into the ground behind the barn. Rebecca had never had reason to go down there before. It was used mostly for storage of vegetables and preserves, and Crawford's men handled that work. She lifted the heavy door as quietly as she could, wincing at the creak of old hinges, then descended the wooden stairs into musty darkness. The smell hit her immediately: blood, sweat, human waste, and the distinct odor of infection. Her stomach turned, but she forced herself to continue down. At the bottom of the stairs, Rebecca's eyes adjusted enough to make out a figure slumped against the far wall, arms chained above his head to an iron ring, legs shackled together. He was Apache. That much was clear from his clothing and appearance, though both were in terrible condition. His buckskin shirt was torn and stained with dried blood, his long black hair matted and tangled. Wounds covered his exposed skin, cuts, burns, bruises in various stages of healing. He wasn't moving, and for a horrible moment, Rebecca thought she had come too late, that he was already dead. But as Rebecca's foot scraped against the dirt floor, the man's head lifted slightly. Even in the darkness she could see his eyes, black and fierce despite obvious pain and weakness. He stared at her with the wariness of a trapped animal expecting another torment, his body tensing, despite his obvious inability to defend himself in any meaningful way. Rebecca stopped several feet away, holding up the water skin where he could see it. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly. "I brought water and food. Please let me help." The warrior said nothing, just continued staring at her with that intense, suspicious gaze. Rebecca understood. Why should he trust anything from a white person, especially one living in the house of his captor? She set the water skin and food bundle on the ground, then slowly approached. "I'm going to clean your wounds," she explained, keeping her voice low and calm. "Crawford and his men are drunk upstairs. They won't hear us if we're quiet. I can't free you, I don't have keys to those chains, but I can at least help you not die of infection before—" She trailed off. Not wanting to complete that thought, Rebecca knelt beside him, moving slowly so as not to startle him further. Up close, she could see the extent of his injuries more clearly, and rage kindled in her chest at Crawford's cruelty. These weren't wounds from capture. These were deliberately inflicted tortures, meant to cause maximum pain without actually killing. She dampened the cloth with whiskey and began carefully cleaning the worst of the wounds, starting with a deep cut on his shoulder that was clearly infected. The warrior flinched at the sting of alcohol but made no sound, his jaw clenched, pride preventing any cry of pain even in these circumstances. "My name is Rebecca," she said quietly as she worked, feeling the need to fill the silence with something human. "I'm an orphan. Crawford owns my labor because of debts my parents left. I'm basically his slave, though he doesn't use that word. I know you probably don't understand English, and even if you do, you have no reason to trust me. But I couldn't just leave you down here to suffer alone. I'm sorry for what he's done to you. I'm sorry for what my people have done to yours. It's not right." "None of this is right." To her surprise, the warrior spoke, his voice rough from thirst but clear. "I understand your words, girl. I am called Silent Thunder. I am war chief of my band." He paused, seeming to measure whether to continue. "Why do you help me? If your master finds you here, he will punish you severely. Yet you risk this for an enemy you do not know." His English was accented but fluent, learned through years of contact with traders and missionaries, and his intelligence was evident, despite his weakened state. Rebecca paused in her cleaning of his wounds, considering the question. "You're not my enemy. Crawford is more my enemy than you'll ever be, and he's supposed to be my own people. As for why I help, because I've been helpless and hurting, and I know what it's like when no one shows mercy. Because I still remember what my mother taught me about treating others with basic human decency. Because if I don't do this, I'll become as cruel and dead inside as Crawford, and I refuse to let him turn me into that." She resumed her work, her hands gentle but efficient. Silent Thunder was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "So you have courage, Rebecca of no family, more courage than many warriors I have known, but you should not come back here. Crawford will discover your aid eventually. Such men always do. He will hurt you badly when he learns of this. Better for you to forget you found me, to stay safe in your small survival." Despite the words, Rebecca could hear something in his voice, not quite hope, but perhaps the faint stirring of it, the recognition that not all white people were monsters, even if most seemed to be. "I'll come back," Rebecca said firmly, finishing with the worst of his wounds and offering him the water skin. "Tomorrow night, and every night I can manage it without getting caught. You're not going to die down here alone if I can prevent it. I can't free you, can't stop what Crawford plans, but I can give you water and food and company. That's not nothing." Silent Thunder drank deeply from the water skin, the first clean water he'd had in days, and Rebecca saw some strength return to him just from that simple sustenance. She left the food where he could reach it with his limited range of motion, promised to return the next night, and crept back upstairs into the Arizona darkness. Her heart was pounding with fear of discovery, but also with something else, purpose. For the first time since her parents died, she was doing something that mattered, something that aligned with who she wanted to be, rather than who circumstances were forcing her to become. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next day, Rebecca went about her work as usual, giving no indication that anything had changed. But that night, she returned to the cellar with more food, fresh water, and clean bandages. Silent Thunder seemed marginally stronger, and they talked more as she tended his wounds. He told her about his tribe, about the land that had been taken from them, about the constant pressure of settlers and soldiers pushing them toward extinction. She told him about her parents, about life before Crawford, about the small hopes she still carried for someday being free. An unlikely bond formed in that dark cellar. two people from opposite worlds finding common ground in shared suffering and stubborn refusal to let cruelty win. This pattern continued for 5 nights. Each evening, Rebecca brought what supplies she could spare, tended Silent Thunder's healing wounds, and spent precious minutes talking with someone who treated her as a person rather than property. Crawford and his men remained oblivious, too drunk most nights to notice one small servant girl's movements, too arrogant to imagine she would dare defy them. But on the 6th night, everything changed. Rebecca descended into the cellar as usual and froze at the bottom of the stairs. Someone had already lit a lamp down there, and in its glow stood Crawford, a vicious smile on his red face. "Well, well," Crawford said, his voice dripping with false pleasantness. "Look what we have here. My little mouse of a servant playing nurse to the savage. Pike told me he thought he saw you sneaking around at night, but I didn't believe him. Thought you were too scared to defy me. Guess I underestimated you, girl." He took a step toward Rebecca, and she backed against the stairs, her heart hammering with terror. Behind Crawford, Silent Thunder strained against his chains, his face showing rage at his helplessness to protect the girl who had shown him kindness. "I'm sorry, Mr. Crawford," Rebecca stammered, trying to appease him, knowing it was probably useless, but unable to stop herself from trying. He was suffering so badly and I couldn't—" Crawford's backhand sent her sprawling, her head cracking against the dirt floor, stars exploding in her vision. "You couldn't what?" he roared, all pretense of civility gone. "You couldn't mind your own business? You couldn't remember your place? You couldn't understand that this savage is my property to do with as I please?" Crawford grabbed Rebecca by her hair and dragged her to her feet, ignoring her cry of pain. "I should beat you bloody for this betrayal. Should lock you down here with him and let you starve together. But you know what? I think I've got a better idea. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to hang this Apache war chief from the big oak tree where everyone can see, and you're going to watch every second of it, so you can understand the consequences of your stupid compassion. Then we'll discuss your punishment for defying me. How does that sound?" Silent Thunder spoke then, his voice carrying unexpected authority despite his captivity. "Crawford, your fight is with me, not the girl. She is innocent, a child who showed mercy you do not understand. Let her go. Do what you will with me, but release her from your service. This I ask as my final request before death." Crawford laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You don't get to make requests, savage. You're nothing but a trophy, a warning, Whatever Crawford was about to say was cut off by a sound that froze everyone in place. From outside, distant but growing rapidly closer, came a thundering that shook the ground itself. Hundreds of hoofbeats approaching fast. Crawford's face went pale as he realized what it meant. Silent Thunder's tribe had found him, and from the sound of it, they had brought every warrior they could muster. Crawford released Rebecca and ran for the stairs, shouting for his men. Rebecca stumbled to Silent Thunder's side, her face bruised and bleeding. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I failed you." "You did not fail," Silent Thunder said firmly, his eyes meeting hers with surprising warmth. "You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me kindness when I expected only cruelty. Whatever happens now, know that you have honored yourself and your parents' memory. You have been brave, Rebecca. Now you must continue to be brave, for the storm that is coming will be terrible, and only you can prevent bloodshed that will stain this land red. Do you understand?" Rebecca nodded, not fully comprehending but trusting him nonetheless. Above them, they could hear Crawford's men scrambling, weapons being loaded, panic spreading through the ranch house. Rebecca scrambled up the cellar stairs behind Crawford, emerging into chaos. The ranch yard had transformed into a scene of panicked preparation. Crawford's dozen ranch hands were grabbing rifles, taking defensive positions behind water troughs and fence posts, their faces pale with the realization of what they faced. The thundering of hooves had stopped, replaced by an ominous silence more terrifying than the approach had been. Rebecca's eyes widened as she looked toward the horizon and saw what had every man on the ranch paralyzed with fear. 300 Apache warriors sat motionless on their horses, forming a perfect semicircle around the ranch buildings. They were arranged in rows, their discipline evident in the military precision of their formation. War paint adorned faces and horses. Weapons were visible but not yet raised, and at the center of the formation sat a warrior whose bearing marked him as someone of great authority. He was perhaps 30 years old, his face painted with red and black symbols, a magnificent war bonnet marking his status as chief. His resemblance to Silent Thunder was unmistakable. This had to be his brother. Crawford stood on his porch, rifle in hand, his earlier bravado replaced by barely concealed terror that he tried to mask with bluster. "Stay where you are," he shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "Come any closer and I'll kill every man-jack of you. This is my land and you're trespassing. I've got every right to defend my property." His men looked at him like he was insane. There was no defending against 300 warriors, and everyone knew it. This was a death sentence unless somehow cooler heads prevailed. The warrior chief raised his hand, and the entire Apache force fell into even deeper silence. When he spoke, his voice carried across the space between them with natural authority, his English nearly perfect. "I am Red Eagle, war chief of the Chiricahua Apache. You hold my brother, Silent Thunder, prisoner in your cellar. You have tortured him, humiliated him, planned his execution as if he were an animal to be put down for your amusement. This ends now. Release him immediately, and we will leave your ranch standing. Refuse, and we will burn it to the ground with everyone inside. You have until the sun moves one hand's width across the sky to decide." Crawford's face turned even redder, rage and fear fighting for dominance. "Your brother trespassed on my land. He killed 2 of my cattle. He's a criminal and a savage, and I've got every right—" Red Eagle interrupted him with a voice like thunder. "My brother killed no cattle. He was scouting water sources for our people when your men ambushed him from behind, shot his horse and dragged him here to torture for sport. We have tracked every step of that journey. We know the truth. You are a liar and a coward, Crawford. Now release my brother or face the consequences of your cruelty." Rebecca stood frozen near the porch, her mind racing. She could see the situation spiraling toward catastrophe. Crawford was too proud and too stupid to back down, even when facing overwhelming force. His men were terrified but loyal enough, or afraid enough of him, that they would fight if he ordered it, and the result would be a massacre. The Apache warriors would overwhelm the ranch in minutes, but not before Crawford's men killed some of them, which would trigger even greater retaliation against other settlers. The cycle of violence would escalate, and innocent people on both sides would die. Something in Rebecca snapped, a determination born of desperation, and the memory of Silent Thunder's words about preventing bloodshed. Before she fully thought through what she was doing, she stepped forward and called out in a loud, clear voice, "Red Eagle, Chief of the Chiricahua, I am Rebecca, and I have been caring for your brother in secret. He is wounded but alive. I can take you to him." Crawford whirled on her with murder in his eyes, but before he could act, Red Eagle spoke again, his attention now focused on the small, bruised girl standing in the ranch yard. "You are the one Silent Thunder spoke of in his prayers," Red Eagle said, his tone shifting slightly to something less harsh. "He called out your name in the night, asking the spirits to protect the white girl who showed him kindness. You are Rebecca, the orphan who risked herself to bring water to my brother when no others would show mercy." His words carried across the silent battlefield, and Rebecca saw some of Crawford's men glancing at her with new understanding, and some with contempt for her betrayal. "Yes," Rebecca said, her voice trembling but determined. "I couldn't leave him to suffer alone down there. He's chained in the cellar beneath the barn. His wounds are healing because I brought medicine and food. Please, I know you have every right to be angry, every reason to seek revenge for what was done to him. But if you attack, innocent people will die on both sides and it will solve nothing. Let me bring Silent Thunder to you. Let me end this without more bloodshed." Crawford grabbed Rebecca's arm viciously, yanking her backward. "He'll do no such thing, you treacherous little—" He never finished the sentence. An arrow thudded into the porch post inches from his head, so fast no one had seen it coming. Red Eagle sat with his bow still raised, his message clear, touched the girl again and the next arrow would not miss. Crawford released Rebecca and stumbled back, his face now showing pure terror, as he realized how close to death he had just come. "The girl speaks with wisdom beyond her years," Red Eagle announced. "She will bring my brother to me, and she will do so unharmed. If any man touches her, if any weapon is raised against her, we will interpret it as an act of war and respond accordingly. Crawford, you will give the girl the keys to my brother's chains. You will do it now." His tone left no room for argument, and after a long, tense moment, Crawford fumbled in his pocket and threw a key ring at Rebecca's feet. His hands shaking with rage and humiliation, Rebecca picked up the keys with trembling fingers and walked toward the cellar entrance. Every eye was on her, 300 Apache warriors watching to see if Crawford would betray this fragile truce, Crawford's men wondering if she was leading them all to slaughter, and Crawford himself radiating such hatred that Rebecca could feel it like heat from a fire. She descended the stairs back into the cellar, where Silent Thunder remained chained, his face showing surprise at her return and confusion about what was happening above. "Your brother is here," Rebecca explained quickly as she fumbled with the keys, trying different ones in the locks. Red Eagle brought 300 warriors. They're surrounding the ranch. Crawford was going to refuse to release you, which would have started a battle that would kill everyone. So I'm bringing you out myself. Her hands shook so badly she could barely work the locks, but finally the first manacle opened, then the second, and Silent Thunder's arms dropped to his sides. She quickly unlocked the leg shackles as well. Silent Thunder stood slowly, his muscles cramped from days of being chained in one position, his wounds still painful, but no longer life-threatening thanks to Rebecca's care. He looked down at her, this small white girl who had risked everything for a stranger, and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You are the bravest person I have ever known, Rebecca. What you have done today, stopping a war before it could begin, will be remembered by my people. But you must understand, when we leave here, you cannot stay. Crawford will kill you for this. You must come with us." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Come with you? To your tribe? But I'm white, Silent Thunder shook his head. "You are someone who showed mercy when mercy was dangerous. You are someone who chose peace over safety. That transcends skin color or culture. My people will welcome you as one who saved their war chief. Crawford's people will hang you as a traitor. The choice is clear, even if it is difficult. Now come, my brother is waiting, and every moment we delay increases the chance that someone will do something stupid that reignites this conflict." Together, they climbed the stairs into the brilliant Arizona sunlight. The sight that greeted them was one Rebecca would remember for the rest of her life. 300 warriors, still sitting motionless on their horses, Crawford and his men with weapons half raised in indecision, and in the center of it all, Red Eagle watching with intense focus as his brother emerged from captivity. Their collective sound rose from the Apache warriors, not quite a cheer, but a murmur of relief and satisfaction that their chief lived and was being freed. Silent Thunder walked forward slowly, Rebecca staying close beside him in case his weakened legs gave out. Crawford's men parted to let them through, none willing to be the one to restart hostilities by harming them. As they crossed the yard toward where Red Eagle sat, Rebecca could feel the tension like electricity in the air. Everyone armed, everyone watching, one wrong move away from catastrophe. Crawford himself stood on his porch, his face purple with rage, but his survival instinct finally overriding his pride enough to keep him silent. When they reached the Apache line, Red Eagle dismounted and embraced his brother, a brief, warrior's greeting that nonetheless conveyed profound emotion. Silent Thunder spoke in rapid Apache, explaining what had happened, gesturing toward Rebecca. Red Eagle listened, then turned his attention to the girl, studying her with eyes that seemed to see into her soul. "My brother tells me you saved his life, not just with medicine but with hope. He says you risked yourself every night to bring him water and kindness when you could have ignored his suffering. For this you have earned the gratitude of the Chiricahua people." Rebecca didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded. Red Eagle continued, his voice now loud enough for everyone to hear. "My brother also tells me you cannot stay at this ranch, that Crawford will kill you for helping an Apache. This is true. We have seen how such men treat those they view as traitors. Therefore I offer you sanctuary among our people. You will be under the protection of Silent Thunder personally, and any who harm you will answer to both him and me. You are welcome in our lodges as long as you wish to stay. What is your answer?" Every face turned toward Rebecca, Apache and white alike, all waiting to see what this orphaned girl would choose. Stay with her own people, where she understood the language and customs but faced certain punishment and probable death, or go with the Apache, where she would be safe but forever an outsider in a world completely foreign to her. It should have been an impossible choice, but as Rebecca looked at Silent Thunder's face, at the respect and gratitude she saw there, at the genuine offer of protection and belonging, the decision became clear. "I accept your offer." "Red Eagle," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I have nothing left here but pain and servitude. If your people will have me, I will go with you and learn your ways." A ripple of surprise went through both groups, Crawford's men muttering in disbelief that she would choose savages over civilization, the Apache warriors murmuring with approval at her courage. Red Eagle nodded with satisfaction, clearly having expected this answer. Crawford finally found his voice again, shouting from his porch, "You think you can just take what's mine? That girl owes me for her parents' debts. She's my property by legal right. I'll report this to the territorial governor, to the army, to—" Red Eagle cut him off with a gesture. "The girl is not property. She is a free human being making her own choice. As for your laws and governors, they mean nothing here. You held my brother prisoner unlawfully, tortured him and planned to execute him. By any law, white or Apache, you are the criminal, not us. Be grateful we are leaving your ranch standing and your men alive. That is more mercy than you showed my brother." Red Eagle remounted his horse and signaled to his warriors. Two of them brought forward a gentle mare, helping Rebecca mount despite her obvious inexperience with horses. Silent Thunder mounted as well, taking position beside Rebecca as her designated protector. The entire Apache force began to move, turning their horses and starting to ride away from the ranch in the same disciplined formation they had arrived in. Rebecca looked back once at the only world she had known and saw Crawford standing on his porch, his face twisted with impotent rage, watching his servant girl ride away with 300 Apache warriors. As they rode into the vast Arizona landscape, Rebecca felt terror and exhilaration in equal measure. She had no idea what lay ahead, no guarantee that this choice would lead to anything better than what she was leaving behind. But beside her rode Silent Thunder, a warrior who had promised to protect her, and around her rode 300 others who had just witnessed her courage and welcomed her into their midst. For the first time since her parents died, Rebecca felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The journey to the Apache camp took 3 days of hard riding across Arizona's unforgiving terrain. Rebecca had never been on a horse for more than a few minutes, and by the end of the first day, every muscle in her body screamed with pain. But she bit her lip and said nothing, refusing to slow down the warriors or appear weak. Silent Thunder noticed her discomfort and would occasionally call for brief rests, claiming he needed to check his healing wounds, though Rebecca suspected he was really giving her a chance to recover without losing face. During those 3 days, Rebecca observed the Apache warriors with fascination and growing respect. They moved across the land with an efficiency and knowledge that spoke of generations of living in harmony with this harsh environment. They found water where Rebecca saw only dry earth, identified edible plants she would have walked past unknowingly, and navigated by reading signs in the landscape she couldn't even perceive. These were not the mindless savages Crawford and his kind described. These were intelligent, skilled people with a deep understanding of survival that far exceeded anything Rebecca had learned in her short life. On the second evening, as they made camp, an older Apache woman approached Rebecca. She was perhaps 50 years old, her face lined with age and wisdom, her manner both stern and kind. Through Silent Thunder translating, she introduced herself as Singing Bird, a healer and respected elder of the tribe. "I have heard what you did for our war chief," she said, studying Rebecca with sharp eyes. "Such courage and compassion are rare, especially from one so young and from a people who have shown us mostly cruelty. You are welcome among us, child, but you must understand, our way of life is very different from yours. You will need to learn new skills, new customs, a new language. Are you prepared for this?" Rebecca met the older woman's gaze directly. "I'm prepared to try. I have nothing to go back to, and I owe my life to Silent Thunder's protection now. I want to learn. I want to be useful, not a burden. Please teach me what I need to know." Singing Bird's stern expression softened slightly, and she nodded with approval. "Good. Pride and laziness have no place in Apache life. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. Tomorrow, when we reach our camp, you will begin learning. It will not be easy, white girl, but I think you have the strength to endure." When they finally arrived at the Apache camp on the 3rd day, Rebecca was overwhelmed by what she saw. Perhaps 200 people lived here, men, women, children, and elders, in traditional wickiups made of brush and hides. The camp was organized with clear purpose, positioned near water and defensible terrain, temporary enough to be moved quickly but comfortable enough for daily life. Children played and laughed. Women worked on various tasks and men maintained weapons and equipment. It was a complete functioning society, nothing like the primitive chaos Rebecca had been taught to expect. The arrival of the war party created immediate excitement. Families rushed forward to greet returning warriors. Children shouted and ran, and women ululated with joy that their men had returned safely. But there was also curiosity, and some suspicion as people noticed the white girl riding among them. Rebecca felt hundreds of eyes on her, heard the murmurs of conversation in a language she didn't understand, and her courage wavered for the first time. What had she done? How could she possibly fit into this world so completely foreign to everything she knew? Silent Thunder must have sensed her fear, because he guided his horse close to hers and spoke quietly. "Do not be afraid. Yes, there will be those who distrust you because of your skin color. We have been given many reasons to hate white people, but there will also be those who judge you by your actions, rather than your appearance. You saved my life and prevented a war. That matters more than the color of your skin. Give them time, Rebecca. Show them through your behavior who you truly are, and they will accept you." Red Eagle called a council that evening, and the entire tribe gathered to hear what had transpired. He told the story of Silent Thunder's capture, Crawford's cruelty, and Rebecca's courage in caring for the prisoner despite the danger to herself. He described how she had stepped forward during the standoff and offered to bring Silent Thunder out, preventing bloodshed that would have harmed both sides. And he announced that she had chosen to leave her people and accept sanctuary among the Apache, placing herself under Silent Thunder's protection. The reaction was mixed. Some nodded with approval, seeing honor in her actions. Others muttered with suspicion, questioning whether a white girl could truly be trusted or whether this was some elaborate trap. An older warrior named Stone Fist spoke up angrily. "How do we know she is not a spy? How do we know she will not lead soldiers to our camp? White people are treacherous. Their words mean nothing. Their promises are lies. I say we should not risk our family's safety for one girl, no matter what she did for Silent Thunder." Before Red Eagle could respond, Silent Thunder stood to address the council. "Stonefist speaks from pain and experience. We have all been betrayed by whites who claimed friendship. But this girl is different. She risked her life every night for 6 nights to bring me water, food, and medicine, when she could have ignored my suffering. She had nothing to gain and everything to lose. When Crawford discovered her, he beat her and threatened to kill her. Yet still she stood between our warriors and the ranch, offering to bring me out peacefully, rather than let violence claim lives on both sides. These are not the actions of a spy or traitor. These are the actions of someone with genuine courage and compassion." He paused, then continued with even greater intensity. "I know some of you have lost family to white violence. I understand your hatred. I have felt it myself. But Rebecca is not responsible for those crimes, any more than our children are responsible for raids our warriors conduct. She is an orphan who survived by serving a cruel master, who showed mercy when mercy was dangerous, and who chose our people over her own when given the choice. If we reject her now, if we judge her only by her skin color and not her character, then we become no better than those who judge us as savages without seeing our humanity." I asked this council to give her a chance to prove herself. The debate continued for over an hour, with various voices speaking for and against Rebecca's presence. Finally, Red Eagle made his decision as chief. "Rebecca will stay, but she will be watched. She will learn our ways and contribute to our community. If she proves trustworthy, she will be fully accepted. If she betrays us, the consequences will be severe. Silent Thunder, you have claimed responsibility for her. Her actions reflect on your honor. Do you accept this burden?" Silent Thunder nodded without hesitation. "I accept it gladly." The following weeks were the most challenging of Rebecca's life. Singing Bird took charge of her education, and the older woman was a demanding teacher. Rebecca learned to identify dozens of plants, which were edible, which had medicinal properties, which were poisonous. She learned to build wickiups, to preserve meat, to tan hides, to make clothing and moccasins. She learned to carry water without spilling it, to gather firewood efficiently, to cook traditional Apache foods. Her hands, already calloused from ranch work, developed new calluses in different places. Her body, thin from years of poor nutrition at Crawford's ranch, began to strengthen from the physical labor and better food. But the hardest part was the language and social customs. Apache was completely unlike English, with sounds and grammar that seemed impossible to master. Rebecca struggled for weeks to make even simple sentences, often frustrated to tears by her inability to communicate. Children would laugh at her clumsy pronunciation, though not always unkindly. Sometimes it was simply the universal humor of hearing someone mangle their language. Slowly, painfully, words began to stick. She learned the names for common objects, then simple verbs, then gradually more complex concepts. Silent Thunder spent time each evening helping her practice, patient with her mistakes, in a way that reminded her of her father teaching her to read years ago. The social customs were equally challenging. Apache society had clear rules about behavior, respect, and relationships that were completely different from white society. Women held more power and status than Rebecca was accustomed to, with property passing through the female line and women having significant voice in tribal decisions. The concept of reciprocal obligation was central. When someone gave you something, you were expected to eventually give something back of roughly equal value. Generosity was highly valued, but so was competence and contribution to the community. Laziness or selfishness were deeply shameful. Rebecca made mistakes constantly in those early weeks. She accidentally violated a taboo about speaking directly to her mother-in-law figure. Singing Bird's status as her teacher placed her in a relationship category with specific rules. She prepared food incorrectly and wasted precious resources. She moved during a ceremony when she should have remained still. But she also learned from each mistake, apologized when appropriate, and gradually began to understand the logic underlying the customs that had seemed arbitrary at first. And slowly, grudgingly, some of the tribe members who had been most suspicious began to soften toward her. The turning point came about 2 months after her arrival. The camp was struck by an outbreak of fever that affected several children and elders. Singing Bird was overwhelmed trying to care for all the sick, and Rebecca, drawing on knowledge from her own mother who had nursed neighbors through illness, volunteered to help. She worked tirelessly for 5 days, barely sleeping, bringing water to the feverish, preparing medicinal teas under Singing Bird's direction, sitting with frightened children through long nights, and generally making herself useful in every way she could. When the fever finally broke and everyone survived, Singing Bird publicly praised Rebecca's efforts before the entire tribe. "This white girl worked as hard as any Apache woman," the elder declared. She did not complain, did not shirk, did not consider herself above the dirty work of caring for the sick. She saved lives through her diligence and compassion. I declare before you all that she has proven herself worthy of our community. From this day forward, she is not the white girl, but Rebecca, daughter of our tribe, under my protection as well as Silent Thunder's. The formal adoption ceremony came a week later. Rebecca was given an Apache name, Little Sparrow for her small size but fierce determination, and welcomed officially into Singing Bird's family line. She received traditional clothing decorated with beadwork, and her hair was styled in the Apache manner. Standing before the assembled tribe in her new identity, Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. For the first time since her parents died, she belonged somewhere. She had a family again, even if it was one she never could have imagined. Her relationship with Silent Thunder evolved during this time as well. He had been her protector and teacher, but gradually became something more, a true friend. Someone she could talk to about her fears and hopes, someone who understood what it was like to bridge 2 different worlds. He told her about his own struggles with white culture, about learning English from missionaries as a child, about the constant tension between preserving Apache ways and adapting to the reality that their traditional life was being destroyed by encroaching settlement. She told him about her parents, about life before they died, about dreams she had once held that now seemed from another lifetime. One evening, about 6 months after her arrival, they sat together on a ridge overlooking the camp, watching the sun set over the Arizona landscape. "Do you regret your choice?" Silent Thunder asked quietly. "Do you miss your old life? Wish you had stayed with your own people?" Rebecca was silent for a moment, considering the question honestly. "I miss my parents," she finally said. I miss some things about the life I knew before they died. But the life I had at Crawford's Ranch? No, I don't miss that at all. And this? She gestured at the camp below, at the community that had slowly accepted her. This is better than anything I could have hoped for. I have purpose here, respect here, belonging here. That's worth more than familiarity. Silent Thunder nodded, seeming satisfied with her answer. You have done well, little sparrow. Better than many full-blood Apache would have done in your situation. You faced hostility with patience, ignorance with willingness to learn, hardship with determination. My people respect that. I respect that. He paused, then added with uncharacteristic hesitancy, and I want you to know you are not just my responsibility anymore. You have become important to me. As a friend, as someone I trust completely, as someone whose presence makes my life better. Rebecca felt her heart beat faster at his words, understanding the significance of them in Apache culture, where such direct emotional expressions were rare, especially from warriors. You're important to me too, she said softly. You saved my life by offering me sanctuary. But more than that, you've given me a new life, a better life. You've been patient with my mistakes, protective without being controlling, and you've treated me as an equal when you could have treated me as a burden. That means everything to me. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged in the vast Arizona sky. Below them, fires lit the camp and the sounds of evening activities drifted up. Children being called to bed, stories being told, the ordinary life of a community going about its business. Rebecca realized with quiet amazement that this was her home now. These were her people now, and this life, so different from anything she had known, was her life now. The orphan girl who had once been Crawford's servant had become Little Sparrow, adopted daughter of the Chiricahua Apache, and she was content. As time passed, Rebecca's integration into the tribe became complete. She became fluent in Apache, contributed valuable skills from her white upbringing. She taught several women to read and write English, useful for dealing with traders and officials, and fully participated in community life. Her relationship with Silent Thunder deepened, and after a proper courtship following Apache customs, they married in a traditional ceremony that united them not just as individuals, but as representatives of two cultures choosing to build something together. Years later, when other white settlers asked Rebecca how she had ended up living among the Apache, she would tell them the truth, that she had been an orphan serving a cruel master, that she had shown kindness to a captive warrior, that 300 riders had surrounded the ranch in rage, and that she had made a choice to prevent bloodshed that had led her to a life she never expected, but had come to love. Some listeners would shake their heads in disapproval, unable to understand how a white woman could choose to live with savages. Others would listen more carefully and hear the real message, that compassion transcends culture, that courage sometimes means choosing the unfamiliar over the familiar, and that belonging is about finding people who see your value. Regardless of the color of your skin, Rebecca never returned to the white world. As tensions between settlers and Apache increased over the years, as the tribe was eventually forced onto reservations, and their traditional way of life was systematically destroyed, she remained with Silent Thunder and their people, sharing their hardships and their diminishing freedoms. She became a bridge between cultures when possible, translating and advocating, though her efforts could only do so much against the tide of history that was grinding Apache independence into dust. But even in the darkest times, when the tribe faced starvation on inadequate reservation lands, when disease and despair claimed so many lives, Rebecca never regretted her choice. She had started as an orphan girl with nothing, shown unexpected courage in guarding a captive warrior, faced 300 riders surrounding her in rage, and emerged not as a victim, but as someone who had shaped her own destiny. She had chosen compassion over fear, understanding over hatred, and belonging with people who valued her over isolation among people who never had. On quiet evenings, when Rebecca was old and her children and grandchildren gathered around to hear stories, they would ask her to tell again about the night she crept down into Crawford's cellar, the day 300 warriors came, the choice she made that changed everything. And she would tell them, wanting them to understand that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. That kindness to strangers can save lives and build bridges, that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the smallest acts of compassion. And as the Arizona stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, as they had for countless generations before and would for countless generations after, Rebecca, little sparrow, would hold Silent Thunder's aged hand and give thanks for the impossible chain of events that had brought them together. The orphan and the warrior, the white girl and the Apache chief, two people from opposite worlds who had found in each other something more valuable than anything their separate cultures could offer: understanding, respect, love, and a belonging that transcended all boundaries. That was the true story of the orphan girl who guarded a captive warrior, who faced 300 riders in rage, and who chose a path that no one could have predicted, but that led her exactly where she needed to be. It was a story of courage, compassion, and the power of individuals to choose peace over violence, understanding over hatred, and love over fear. And it was a story worth remembering, worth telling, worth honoring, because such stories reminded people of what was possible when they chose to see the humanity in those they had been taught to hate. The end came not with drama, but with peace. Silent Thunder and Rebecca grew old together, surrounded by family and community, their love deepening with each passing year. When Silent Thunder finally passed, Rebecca mourned him with traditional Apache customs, then lived another decade, teaching younger generations, preserving stories, and serving as a living link between the old ways and the new realities the tribe faced. And when her time came, she died peacefully in her sleep, and the entire tribe mourned Little Sparrow, the white woman who had become more Apache than many born to the tribe. Her legacy lived on in her children and grandchildren, in the stories told about her courage, in the example she set of choosing compassion over fear. The orphan girl who had once had nothing had given the Apache people something precious, proof that not all white people were enemies. That understanding was possible, that courage and kindness could bridge any divide. And in a time when such bridges were desperately needed, when hatred and violence threatened to consume everything, that legacy was worth more than gold.